in the bustling heart of ancient Rome, beneath the shining splendor of towering marble temples, crowded forums, and the constant roar of Senate debates, a darker and far more silent economy thrived in the shadows, the vast and highly organized slave markets. Within this massive human commerce that fueled the empire, one particular group endured a fate that remains both deeply troubling and largely forgotten in popular histories: young enslaved boys. Trafficked not mainly for hard agricultural labor or gladiatorial combat, but for intimate, domestic, and decorative roles inside the private households of Rome's wealthiest elite. What did it truly mean to be a delicatus, the special Latin term Romans used for a favored young male slave, carefully selected for his graceful features, smooth skin, refined manners, and pleasing appearance? To the ordinary citizens in the Forum or the powerful aristocratic families living on Palatine Hill, these boys were nothing more than expensive property, equivalent in status to fine imported furniture, rare artworks, prized racehorses, or exotic spices. Public auctions were regularly held in key locations such as the Forum Boarium near the Tiber River, where rows of enslaved men, women, and children stood on wooden platforms with wooden placards hanging from their necks. These signs listed their age, place of origin, special skills, state of health, and asking price. Young boys, most often captured or bought from Greece, Thrace, Syria, Phrygia, Cappadocia, or other eastern provinces, commanded especially high prices when they possessed the desired elegance and exotic refinement. Some arrived as spoils of Roman military conquests, others were sold into slavery by impoverished provincial families desperate for money. The Roman satirist Juvenal, writing in the Aeneid, late 1st and early 2nd century C, bitterly mocked this excess in his satires, declaring that a curly-haired boy from Asia cost more than a good-sized farm. His sharp words laid bare the empire's deep moral contradictions, a society that prided itself on law, virtue, and civilization, while openly trading human lives alongside cattle, grain, and luxury goods. Once purchased by a wealthy Roman master, the life of a delicatus transformed into one of constant oversight, intensive training, and severe personal restriction. These boys were often subjected to strict discipline from a very young age. Their daily routine revolved around grooming, learning refined manners, mastering music, poetry recitation, dance, or serving at lavish banquets in the private quarters of Rome's senators, poets, generals, and imperial officials. They lived in luxurious yet confining conditions, surrounded by marble floors, silk draperies, and fragrant oils, but denied any true freedom or personal autonomy. Their bodies, voices, and appearances were carefully managed to reflect their owner's wealth, taste, and social status. The Roman Empire did not merely tolerate this system of exploitation, it actively institutionalized and normalized it. The buying, selling, and training of young enslaved boys for personal service formed an accepted part of the luxury economy that sustained the imperial upper class for centuries. Castration as control, the imperial court's dark and calculated practice. For the most highly prized boys destined for service in the emperor's own household or the innermost circles of power, ordinary ownership was never considered sufficient. Total and permanent control was required. This led to the widespread yet controversial use of eunuchs, known in Latin as spadones or eunuchi, within the Roman imperial court. These were young enslaved boys and adolescents who underwent castration specifically to preserve youthful physical traits such as a high voice, smooth skin, and lack of facial hair, while ensuring complete dependence on their masters and eliminating any possibility of producing heirs that could complicate dynastic politics. Although Roman authors frequently criticized eunuchs in public writings as symbols of Eastern effeminacy and moral decay, the practice persisted because it proved extremely useful to the elite. Many eunuchs came from regions such as Parthia, Asia Minor, Syria, and Egypt, where The custom had older roots. Castration was technically prohibited under the Lex Corneliae. Sicaris et beneficis, originally aimed at curbing violence, but enforcement remained inconsistent and weak, especially when powerful imperial households or wealthy senators were involved. The surgical procedure itself was crude, extremely painful, and highly dangerous in an era before modern anesthesia or antibiotics. Many boys died from infection, blood loss, or complications, while survivors often suffered lifelong health issues. Roman medical writers like Celsus described some methods, but detailed accounts were deliberately limited. As the empire expanded eastward, the demand for such castrated slaves grew. They became visible symbols of Rome's vast reach and the emperor's absolute authority over human bodies. Inside the imperial palace on the Palatine Hill, these eunuchs performed trusted roles, managing private chambers, attending to the emperor's personal needs, carrying messages, and serving as intermediaries. Their altered physical state guaranteed loyalty through dependence and removed any threat to the imperial bloodline. The emperor's slaves, hidden lives and forgotten suffering inside Rome's imperial court, stripped of freedom, family ties, original names, and any hope of a normal future. Many of these enslaved boys vanished into the private world of the imperial court, rarely leaving behind their own recorded stories. One of the most notorious and tragic examples was Sporus, a strikingly beautiful young slave who was drawn into Emperor Nero's inner circle during the mid-1st century say. According to the historian Suetonius in his famous work, The 12 Caesars, Nero ordered Sporus to be castrated, then dressed him in women's clothing and jewelry. Nero even staged a formal public marriage ceremony in which he treated Sporus as his wife, calling him Sabina in memory of his deceased empress Poppaea Sabina. Sporus accompanied Nero during public appearances, rode in the imperial litter, and lived within the palace. Most historians interpret these acts not as romantic affection, but as extreme demonstrations of imperial power, theatrical cruelty, and Nero's desire to exert total domination over another human being. Sporus was far from the only one. Roman literature and court records frequently mention delicati, pueri delicati, and palace eunuchs selected specifically for their looks and trained in refined arts. They performed at banquets by singing, playing the lyre, dancing, or serving wine. With elegant gestures, they attended their masters in the public baths, carried fans, held mirrors, and acted as living ornaments that showcased the owner's sophistication and wealth. Poets such as Martial and Catullus wrote verses about them, sometimes praising their beauty and grace, sometimes using them as targets for sharp social commentary. Yet behind the perfume, silk garments, and golden couches existed a world of fear and uncertainty. The imperial court was a dangerous place filled with political intrigue, jealousy, and sudden shifts in favor. If a slave displeased the emperor, lost his youthful appearance, or was suspected of disloyalty, he could be beaten, sold, exiled, or executed without any legal recourse. Rumors of even darker abuses circulated during the reigns of certain emperors. Suetonius and other writers describe troubling scenes at Emperor Tiberius's private villa on the island of Capri, where young slaves were reportedly subjected to various forms of exploitation. While some of these accounts may have been exaggerated by later authors for political reasons, the repeated appearance of similar stories across multiple independent sources suggests that real abuse of power occurred regularly. What made the lives of these delicati and eunuchs especially tragic was the painful paradox. They lived high visibility combined with complete voicelessness. They were constantly on display as symbols of Roman luxury and imperial greatness, yet they possessed almost no personal agency or rights. They could sleep in marble halls and wear fine clothes, but remained utterly powerless, admired for their elegance while being exploited for the pleasure and status of others. Roman society, obsessed with hierarchy, status, and public image, viewed their condition not as a moral failing, but as a natural expression of elite privilege and power. Rome's extensive commerce in enslaved boys and the calculated use of castration revealed the harsh truth hidden behind the empire's glittering achievements in law, engineering, literature, and conquest. Refinement, culture, and sophistication were built directly upon systematic exploitation, physical violation, and absolute domination of the powerless. These practices served as tools to maintain social order and reinforce the authority of the ruling class. The silenced fates of these young slaves and eunuchs continue to serve as a powerful warning. Across the centuries, even the most advanced and civilized societies can hide profound cruelty behind art, law, ritual, and philosophy. Their muted testimonies invite us to look more critically at Roman greatness and question how power shapes and deforms human lives. How might the hidden stories of these delicati and castrated boys change the way you view the glory of ancient Rome? Comment below, what does this darker side of Roman history reveal about the nature of power, luxury, and human exploitation? As the Roman satirist Juvenal famously warned, quis custodiet ipsos custodes, who will guard the guards themselves?